It begins with silence. A gated community in Richmond, Texas, where residents paid for the safety of locked entrances and security patrols. But on the morning of August 29, 2021, that silence was shattered, not by alarms or screams, but by the discovery of two bodies behind one apartment door. Jenae, known to millions as Miss Mercedes Morr, was found dead. Beside her, the body of a man who did not belong, a man who left behind only scars on his own body and writings on the walls. No forced entry, no sign of robbery. Just two lives ended and a trail of questions that would haunt a family, a community, and the world watching. Before we go further, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more untold true crime documentaries that honor victims, demand justice, and uncover the truths behind the headlines. Hit the like button to push this story into the algorithm, because stories like Jenae's deserve to be remembered. Jenae wasn't just a headline. She was a 33-year-old woman, a daughter, a sister, and a beloved friend. Born and raised in Houston, Texas, Jenae built her name in a digital world where beauty and influence could turn a private life into a public brand. Online, she was known as Miss Mercedes Morr, an Instagram model with more than 2.6 million followers. Her feed was filled with glamorous photos, brand collaborations, and the life of a woman who had mastered the art of social media influence. But off camera, her family insists she was private, grounded, and deeply connected to those she loved most. She was not the stereotype some tried to paint her as. She was family first. She was homegrown Houston. She was her father's baby girl. Her father, Mark Gagnier, remembers her as more than an influencer. He describes her as quiet, funny, and fiercely loved. To her family, she was not just Mercedes Morr. She was Jenae, the daughter who checked in, the sister who cared, the young woman who always came home when she needed comfort. For her, fame was not the prize. Family was. But on that August weekend when her phone fell silent, her father knew something was wrong. He hadn't heard from her. Calls went unanswered, messages unread. And so he drove to Richmond, to the gated apartment complex where she lived. Inside apartment 1001, he opened the door to a nightmare no parent should ever face. What he found was a scene as horrifying as it was confusing. His daughter was lifeless, positioned at the base of the staircase. Nearby, the body of a man, later identified as 34-year-old Kevin Alexander Accordo of Florida, was upstairs, fatally wounded. The walls of the apartment carried disturbing writings in lipstick and markers, but no clear explanation for what had unfolded. It was chaos, and yet eerily controlled. No broken windows, no forced doors, a stranger in a secured complex, and a daughter who would never go home again. According to the Fort Bend County Medical Examiner, Jenae's cause of death was strangulation and a traumatic concussion. Her death was ruled a homicide. Kevin Accordo's cause of death was determined to be multiple sharp force injuries, ruled a suicide. Police made clear that there were no signs of forced entry and no evidence suggesting a robbery. Jenae had been murdered in her own home, and her killer had turned the weapon on himself. If you're watching this right now, take a moment to comment "Justice for Jenae" below. Every single comment helps keep her name alive in the fight against the way victims are often silenced by the noise of speculation. So who was the man found alongside her? Kevin Alexander Accordo, a 34-year-old man from Florida. To many, his presence raised more questions than answers. Police confirmed he had no criminal history. He had no prior connections to Jenae that they could immediately establish. He was not known to her family. He was not known in Texas. And yet somehow he gained access to her life in the most brutal way possible. The method of his death was unusual. Sharp force injuries, self-inflicted. Investigators noted the strangeness of it all. A man with no prior violence, no arrests, no history that predicted this, dead by his own hand in an act of violence that defied explanation. And the biggest mystery remained. How did he even get inside? The Cortland apartments were a gated community, a place where residents relied on coded entry, keycards, and surveillance. Yet there was no sign of a break-in. No explanation for how he bypassed the barriers meant to keep strangers out. The unanswered question echoed in every news report. How did Kevin Accordo get into Jenae's home? Richmond police began a careful investigation. They turned to digital forensics, examining phones, computers, and social media connections. They wanted to know if there had been any prior communication, any message threads, any signs of contact. But their early findings gave little reassurance. They stated there was no evidence of robbery, no trafficking connections, and no indication that Jenae was involved in any kind of sugar daddy relationship. In fact, her family immediately and firmly pushed back against those rumors, calling them disrespectful and false. For the Gagné family, this was more than an investigation. It was a defense of their daughter's dignity. In press conferences and interviews, her father spoke out, insisting Jenae was not the stereotype being spun online. She was not defined by her Instagram fame. She was not involved in anything shady. She was a daughter, a sister, a loved one. He wanted the world to understand she was special, just like everybody's loved ones are special. But even as investigators combed through evidence, the larger mystery remained unsolved. No one could explain why Accordo was there, what his relationship was to Jenae, if any, or how he managed to get past the locked gates. Police reiterated that the public was not at risk, that this was an isolated incident. But that answer was cold comfort to a grieving family and a community left with questions that may never be fully answered. Meanwhile, tributes poured in. Fans across social media expressed shock, disbelief, and mourning. But beyond fans, celebrities and cultural icons also spoke out. Drake dedicated his album Certified Lover Boy to Jenae, a gesture that reached headlines around the world. Cardi B defended her against online critics, demanding that people stop victim blaming and instead respect her memory. To them, and to millions who had followed her, Jenae was more than her death. She was an icon, a woman whose influence and light touched countless lives. Her family held vigils in Houston, where loved ones gathered with candles, music, and prayers. They remembered Jenae not for the way she died, but for the joy she brought in life. Pictures of her smile lit up the night, and her name echoed in chants of remembrance. If you're still with us in this documentary, this is where we ask you to honor Jenae in the way her family requested, by keeping her story alive. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video. Because when we say her name, we mean keep her legacy louder than the rumors, louder than the speculation, louder than the violence that tried to erase her. The case closed quickly in terms of charges because the suspect was dead. There would be no trial, no courtroom showdown, no defense to challenge. But for the family, closure was far from complete. They were left with a lifetime of unanswered questions and a loss that can never be repaired. The writings on the wall inside Jenae's apartment, cryptic, emotional, disturbing, offered no clarity. Police described them but never released full details. Were they declarations of obsession, ramblings of a disturbed mind, or desperate explanations no one would ever fully understand? Whatever they were, they left behind only more shadows in an already dark tragedy. And so the story of Jenae, Miss Mercedes Morr Gagné, remains both brutally simple and endlessly complex. The facts are plain. She was murdered in her home by a stranger, and he then took his own life. But the questions that remain, the why, the how, the what if, are pieces of a puzzle that may never be solved. In the end, what remains is her family's voice, her father's grief, her community's love, and a legacy that refuses to be defined by tragedy alone. Remember Jenae not as a statistic, not as a headline, but as the daughter who lit up her father's world, as the sister whose laughter filled her family's home, as the influencer who inspired millions with her confidence and presence. A locked gate, no forced entry, a stranger inside, a daughter gone, and a family left with only memories, fighting to make sure her story is told with dignity. This has been the story of Jenae Gagné, known to the world as Miss Mercedes Morr. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If you believe her story matters, please like this video, leave a tribute in the comments, and subscribe for more true crime documentaries that honor victims and keep their memories alive. And remember, behind every headline is a human life, and every life deserves justice, respect, and remembrance.